Sure. My name is Arturo Ortega. I'm the Assistant Superintendent here in Baldwin Park in charge of elementary education. Recently, the IT department, I ran that for 3 years, but we're in transition now, so someone else is going to be overseeing that department now.
Great. Well, Arturo, thanks for taking time to meet with us today. We're trying to explore how did Baldwin Park get to where it is, get the success that it's had, and looking at the transitions that have happened over the past several years. I'd like to start with going back to when you first became principal. I believe you were one of the first principals that Mark Skvarna appointed when he became superintendent. What changes have you seen, if any, in the way the leadership team and principals work over the intervening years?
Okay, so yes, if I'm not mistaken, I was Mark's first appointment. Happened on a sunny day in June. I was playing in the 6th grade softball tournament, so I was in shorts and a cap and a t-shirt when he showed up to Pleasant View. Asked me how I was doing. I said fine. He said good, because as of tomorrow you're the principal of Pleasant View Elementary School. And that's how it went down. So I did that for almost 6 years, and then I transitioned over here to my position here. Over the years, since my tenureship as a principal to now, 5 years under my wing as the assistant superintendent in charge of principals and supervising principals, I think the biggest change at the elementary level has been the focus on instructional leadership. Instruction, curriculum has always been important. Not to say that hasn't been important, but the shift that it is of the utmost importance. So for instance, to give you an idea or an example of what that means, our principal meetings are very, very, very little operations. Most of it is on professional development, curriculum, and instruction. So our last principal meeting, which just happened to be last week, we spent 2 hours on CGI, cognitively guided instruction, which is something that we're bringing in at the elementary level. We're training all of our teachers, TK all the way to 6th grade this year. And just a different approach on how to teach mathematics with the ultimate goal of having the students understand at the conceptual level and not just at the skill level or at the procedure level. So the principals got 2 hours from an administrative perspective. How do I support my teachers? What should I be looking for when I get into classrooms? How do I answer this and this? How do I keep this alive at my school? It's a 3-day training, and 3 days may seem like a lot, but it's just scratching the surface. So how do I maintain this? How do I keep going on with this? This year there's a huge focus on the 4 C's, especially critical thinking. And so we spent an hour and a half doing a professional development on critical thinking on something that we called canned CMTs. Every Wednesday we have our bank time, which is our common meeting time. And since the principals have 2 common goals of the 4 C's and critical thinking, it's my job to assist them in being successful in that. So we do canned CMTs for them, where I will go like this, I'll become a principal, they become teachers, and we do a staff CMT. And we call it canned because they can literally take that presentation, take my name off, put their name, change the date, and just do the CMT as if they was their own. But we do give them the presentation. They can take out the parts that they didn't like. They can insert things that they felt could make it better, and then they can proceed from there. So that was an hour and a half. So 3.5 hours just on PD, on instruction and curriculum. And we did have a little bit operational in regards to assessments. But for the most part, all of our principal meetings run that way. And that is a huge shift. In the past, it was a lot of sit and get. Again, I'm not critiquing that. I'm not saying that's bad. But we have shifted away from that to model what should be happening in classrooms and support our principals when that's going on. I think another thing that has been different from when I was a principal is not only the allowance of collaboration, but kind of the expectation of collaboration. That together as a unit, the power of 13, we are a much stronger team than if I have a great idea, but I'm going to keep it to myself because I don't want to share because I want to be the one on top. And so it's been a process. Again, we've been going at this for just about 5 years, or if not a little bit more than 5 years. So every month, principals are put into groups and they go about and these things called collaboratives. That doesn't involve me. It's them on their own. And we have a topic. So for instance, the topic last month was Buyback Day. We have a Buyback Day coming up here on November 1st. So just to brainstorm, what are you doing for Buyback Day? What are you focusing on? Are you giving time for collaboration? What are your topics? Is it the 4 C's? Is it the new assessments? So just have a time to talk about that. Then those 3 groups come back together at the principal meeting, and then we have a protocol where each group shares out what they discussed. And so Frolin was there when we were doing this, and it's amazing. I remember back in the day, buyback days, trying to think about how am I going to fill up 6.5 hours of time with the teachers. Just in this protocol, literally, they have 2 years worth of PD if they wanted to, like with materials, handouts, the whole 9 yards. And so that collaborative spirit is something that we have been fostering throughout my tenureship here, and it's extremely strong. I'm very, very proud of where the principals are at and where we're at. It's been 5 years, but it's amazing now that there are only 4 principals that were not hired by me. So there's been a kind of a turnover on principals, and so the majority of the team has now been hired by me. So those are some of the key things I think that have shifted over the years. The big things. There's a lot of little things, but those are probably the big things.
Let me just adjust his time up. You just sit right there. Do a little bit of wrestling.
Is Pivot still working?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say that transition from, these are good examples of the kind of support, and I'm going to ask you what other kind of support do the principals get?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Arturo, those were really good examples of the kind of support that you're able to provide from the district level. Are there other kinds of support that the principals are receiving that help them maintain that instructional leadership focus?
Yes. So from the district level, I shared some things from student achievement. I'm just going to kind of veer off a little bit here from the IT perspective because it is all about support. I never want to forget what it was like to be a principal. It's the most thrilling, gratifying job out there, but it's also probably the most difficult in a district level position because there's so many things going on, and it's difficult sometimes to maintain that focus on curriculum and instruction. So we bombard them with support. So for instance, like in the IT department, every single day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, there is some form of support available to the sites. Whether it's support on site where we would deploy out and help them with Illuminate or help them with Brain Pop or help them with whatever it is. Tuesdays and Thursdays after school, if a small group of teachers got a brand new Eno board and they wanted to kind of dig deeper on how do I use this, we could be deployed out. And then Wednesdays we were available for that CMT time. So that's just another example. Last year, I believe it was last year, about a year and a half ago, we also got into contract with Pivot. Pivot is a nonprofit group that works here, and we happened to come across Pivot because they offer professional development at the assistant superintendent level on curriculum and instruction, and by far, from the ones that I have attended and have been part of, it's probably the most powerful PD. Because they have the same philosophy that you don't go there and just sit and get stuff. We actually do protocols, we do collaboration, we do the critical thinking, we do the share outs. And so we learn in the manner that's supposed to be happening in classrooms. So that's why I find it so powerful. So about a year and a half ago, we did enter into a contract with them that was twofold. Number one, they were hired to help us kick off a 10-day summer institute that we were offering our principals and a team of teachers from their site. That happened over here at the local one of the local universities at Cal Poly Pomona. And it was 10 days of what is this thing called Common Core. And so they were in charge of kind of helping us oversee the 10 days, and specifically week one, where it was talking about what is Common Core, how does it affect math, how does it affect language arts. And then we also, to help and kind of envision that support that principals are going to need, we're also hired to offer on-site support for the principals. Now that on-site support was not dictated or mandated. It took many, many different shapes and forms. So to some, the support was emails. Hey, I'm working on this. Do you have any resources on this? Hey, I'm trying to think between this and this. What would you recommend? Hey, I'm kind of bouncing this idea. Some it was phone calls. Some of them was visits to the school, but only to visit maybe with the principal and the resource teacher to bounce ideas. Or I'm having a difficult time in this kind of change process. So that was one layer. Some schools use them with their leadership teams, with their whole staff, with walkthroughs. So they have been really, I was going to say really pivotal, but that would kind of sound funny. But they have been a good piece, a layer of support for our staff. And there's, again, the way that they have assisted is a lot of different ways, depending on the school site. Here at the district level for year 2, we didn't do this in year 1, but now me and my counterpart, Mada Arellano, really want to work towards a TK adult school vision, where I'm not working on a vision for elementary and she's working on a vision for secondary, but where is that connection? How do we go about this in a holistic approach? And so Pivot has also been working with us, kind of giving us feedback, thinking about kind of, helping us with those ideas that we have to kind of frame and refine those ideas.
It sounds like your principals have a lot of autonomy about how they go forward. How do you balance that autonomy with implementing, say, the district strategic plan and keeping everybody going in the same direction?
So the principals do have quite a bit of autonomy. There is very little that we would say is quote-unquote mandated. But the way we do it is we lay out our expectations, and so we kind of build the playground, and we say you're free to play. If you want to get on the slides, go for it. If you want to get on the swings, go for it, but you must stay within this playground. So for instance, with the strategic plan, we started this last year, and this year we kind of upped the ante and made it a little bit more organized than it was last year. But principals have to come up with an accountability plan. They have to come up with 4 goals that they're going to work on this year at their school sites. Whether it's visibility, like I'm going to work on my visibility, like I feel I wasn't out there enough. Whether it's we really want to implement AR more effectively so that everyone's using it. Whether it's parents, I'm really going to work on my parent involvement this year. So they have to come up with these goals. But these goals, as of last year and following into this year, have to be tied specifically to an area of the strategic plan. And it has to be called out on the plan, down to the page number of where they got that from. So that's one way that we kind of tie in, but they have autonomy on what goals they're going to work with. They sit and counsel with me. We go over the accountability plan. Sometimes, there's a push and a shove and kind of, are you sure this is what you really want to do? Sometimes it's the other way around. This is a lot. Are you sure this is what you want to do? But this year, when I said we upped the ante, this year, all along, they have always been working on 4 goals autonomy. I mean, they had the autonomy to do whatever 4 goals they wanted to do, again, in consultation with me. This year, for the first time, we have 2 goals that are common across all 13 principals. The goal and the expectation is concrete, black and white. There's no veering from that. The autonomy, though, is the approach that you're going to take to get to that. So our 2 goals goal number 1 centers around the 4 C's. It's a very, very low floor on purpose. And basically, the goal is that once a week, in every single classroom, there's going to be a lesson, an activity, a task, something that's going to engage both the teacher and the students in the area of the 4 C's. And goal 2 is exactly the same, but specifically with critical thinking. So when I say they have autonomy, for instance, one principal might take the approach of, I'm going to give my teachers autonomy on how to do that. They just have to call it out on their lesson plans. So once a week on the lesson plans, they have to circle or highlight, okay, this is when I'm doing the 4 C's. Another principal might take a different approach and say, hey, grade level, you guys need to get together. We're going to be working on these 4 C's. We're going to be working on critical thinking. As a grade level, decide what that's going to look like. And so they might have grade level plans where it's going to say, okay, every Monday, we're going to kick off the week with the investigate the lesson concept from math, which is very rigorous, involves a lot of critical thinking and the 4 C's. And so the autonomy to be able to do that however they see fit to do that. So that's kind of the way that we lay out the expectations. We support them to get to those expectations, but they do have a lot of free reign in regards to how they're going about what they're doing.
Let's kind of shift gears here and I'm going to go to something that the superintendent talked about when we interviewed him, and that was around belief in our students, high expectations for our students. And I know that the team has been looking at test data, a lot of data actually, around students. Kind of talk about beliefs. The superintendent felt that things have greatly improved over the last decade, but can you give us a comment on that?
Sure, I want to start off with, and I'm sorry that I'm not crediting the right person because this person escapes me, but came across a quote that we've been using right now in our 3-day Common Core training that we've been doing with our teachers. And the quote, in essence, basically says, it's great to have high expectations. Like, that's amazing. But the teachers, the great teachers that set them apart from all the other teachers is that they believe and support their kids to get to those expectations. And I think that's huge because we do come across, I'm not saying here, but we do come across a lot of individuals who do have high expectations, and if you don't meet those expectations, well, sorry for you. I taught it. You were supposed to learn it. It's your responsibility. We have been going through CGI training, which is through UCLA, Cognitively Guided Instruction with mathematics. And it just gives me chills on the feedback that I have been getting. I have a teacher who shared with me that they felt so bad. She said, I feel so bad. For so many years, I haven't been expecting this of my kids in the area of math. And some of them have lived up to that expectation, some of them have not. Through the CGI training, my expectations of what kids can do in mathematics, she's used the word, has revolutionized. She says, and I feel bad because now my expectations are here, and in a very short amount of time, the kids are living up to this. And how sad that I had, I thought I had great expectations for my kids, but this has showed me that no, my expectations have been very, very limited. So when your expectations are here and kids are meeting that expectation, then you have a sense of accomplishment. I share the story, I grew up right next door here in La Puente, and in high school, I felt, and I think I was a rock star. I was in ASB, I was in the Senior Hall of Fame, I was, counselors loved me, I was an A student, and I basically was going to go anywhere I wanted to go. And that was the case. I ended up at UCLA. I was one of 3 students at my high school that got accepted to UCLA, and so I was very jazzed. But then I got to UCLA my first quarter, and in a very short period of time, a quarter, I was on academic probation and facing and doubting myself of what kind of student I really was. And so to the expectations of my high school, I was a rock star. But to the expectations of the outer world, I was very, very ill prepared. And it was a very short period of time where I really had told myself education is not for me, and had dropped out of school and started working full time. And luckily, I got back into the swing of things, joined a community college, and went from there. So I think that's that's kind of part of that conversation about the expectation of kiddos. But I think that it comes back down to that support and that modeling and that layering. I tell principals, I say, you're nothing but a teacher. That's what you are. You're a teacher. You have to see yourself that way. I'm a teacher. You're my students. And so how do I model to my students what I'm expecting to see in classrooms? And so expectations as we continue to go on with Common Core, Smarter Balanced, as you may be aware, I say it's the CSTs, 180 degrees and a speeding bullet train that way. It is completely the opposite direction of what CST was measuring and assessing. And we need to start shifting, again, what we believe kids can do. And in a very short amount of time, through the 10-day institute, through the 3-day Common Core trainings, through the CGI training. I was just at a school last week, and it really just sends chills. And I was telling the principal, I said, you're so lucky you get to see this every day. It's just amazing the things that teachers and kids are doing. And she pointed out that kids who in the past have been written off are actually experiencing success because they're having that opportunity to communicate, to collaborate, to think outside the box. And it's just amazing the things that are happening in our classrooms. It's something that you would rarely see in the past. And to see this huge movement and so many people on board for our kids, because ultimately that's what it's for, right? I said, look, Common Core, forget Common Core. Forget 4 C's, forget the 3 R's, forget all of that. Here's the bottom line. Our employers and our universities are saying that our kids are ill-prepared when they graduate for high school. Let's do it for our kids, right? I have small kids at home. I want them to be able to go through a system, a public education system, that when they graduate, they're going to have options and that it's going to mean something. So let's frame it around that. Let's not frame it, oh, here comes another standards. Oh, here comes another set. Oh, here comes the pendulum swinging. Let's frame it around the reality that our kids face when they graduate high school. And right now, it's a very difficult reality. Kids are spending an enormous amount of money, an enormous amount of time trying to take remedial courses just to catch up to an entry level in universities. And they're having a difficult time with employers. More and more and more, you know, we actually interviewed some employers here when we were creating our strategic plan. And more you start hearing these terminologies, soft skills, intangibles, because I said this yesterday publicly, I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble, but that phrase, knowledge is power, is losing its power. Because I don't know that it's how applicable it is in today's market, that knowledge is power. Back in the days, absolutely. Knowledge was 100% power. The more you knew, the more valuable you were. But now, knowledge is everywhere. It's acceptable and accessible to everyone. So now it's not more about the knowledge that you have. It's more about, can you locate the knowledge, apply it to whatever it is that you're working on, and be successful in that way. So I think that all of those things are really exciting, and I think that when we start thinking in that lens and start thinking in that kind of vein about where we want our kids to be, then I think it's natural that our expectations start shifting, our expectations start moving, morphing into something that's definitely way above where our reality was a couple years ago with CSTs and the old standards.
That's great. I love that comment. Is there anything else that you want us to capture before we set you free?
Well, I mean, I think that as an administrator, I've only known Mark. I haven't known another superintendent. In my position, I have the opportunity and the blessing to interact with a lot of assistant superintendents, not so much superintendents, but a lot of assistant superintendents, and kind of, you know, talk and listen and pay attention and keep my ear to the ground. And I think that Mark has been the enabler of what has happened. And I think that his belief or his non-fear of outside the box doing what's right, not what's supposed to happen. I think that modeling, that courageous leadership, I pay attention to that. And, I try to incorporate some of those things in what I do and the way I go about. In a way, it was a blessing that when I got here, within a couple of months, everybody was gone. And so I never learned how to be an assistant superintendent. And so I think that in a way that kind of helped, because it allowed to mold. And again, looking at the examples that I did have in Mark and the way he went about what he was doing, really helped frame. And so I think that should not go unsaid. That again, he's been the enabler, because I do hear and know different systems and the way they operate. And so I think that has been huge for us here in Baldwin Park. The trust factor, the almost encouragement to think outside the box, to look at things differently, I think should not go unnoticed. I think that's been huge.
I want to kind of get a synthesis. The one thing that I'd like you to speak to is, 9 years, right? Now you're 9 years, right? Since you became a principal to now?
No, more like 11.
11 years, okay. So you've been through this whole arc. Is there, as far as the students are concerned, how different is it now for kids in Baldwin Park than it was when you first started 11 years ago as principal? Give us that picture.
Sure. So again, at the end of the spectrums, meaning when I first started to now, I think there's a couple of things that should be pointed out. And this is at nobody's fault. I say this publicly. Our teachers, our principals, us, have lived in a system that was created, and for better or for worse, and I guess we can critique that part of it too, I guess, but we've lived in a system that we have felt that we have been pretty successful at. But that system is changing. And the more we read, the more we learn, the more we encounter, the more we look into, we are realizing that the system that we used to be in, of a narrow curriculum, of this pacing that just has to keep going regardless of where you're at. Look, it doesn't matter if they don't know the area, they just need to know length times width, okay, let's move on. I think those types of things, which again, kind of a weird thing, has benefited us in a way. And so moving away from that to trying to take the curriculum and say it's about understanding. The procedural will come, but we have to take that leap of faith. It's about kids not sitting like this for 6.5 hours, saying yes, 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 and writing. Moving from passive learning to active learning. Moving from no say to involvement. Moving from the teacher not being on 99% of the time, but letting the kids be on as well. And that shared education, that shared learning, that shared teaching, I think is huge. And I think that it's easy to say, but for some of us, because we're on a continuum as adults also, right? Some people are going to eat this alive, and it's just like, yes, give me more. I want to start tomorrow. Some people not so much, right? I'm weary about this. Is this another, again, pendulum swing? Tomorrow, are we going to be back to over here? And I think that with the support that we've been giving our teachers, for instance, I just keep talking about the CGI because I think that has been the biggest of everything that we've done at the elementary level. This is probably the biggest game changer, because we've been doing a lot about what? Here's Common Core, here's the math standards, you have S&Ps, you have content, you have the 4 Cs, and we've been doing a lot of that, and we've been trying to model a lot. But here is 3 days devoted to how kids learn, to how you can teach. And so I think that's the biggest thing. I talked about being at the school last week. Again, what's happening in our classrooms today, you would maybe, rarely, you would see in classrooms in the past. And again, I do not fault the teachers. I do not fault the administration. It's just we've been living in a system, and that system has been broken. And we drank the Kool-Aid early on. We jumped on board with Common Core. So we've been going at Common Core for 3 years now, which is kind of amazing compared to what's happening at our sites. And so when we think about Common Core at our administrative level, at our level, at the teacher level, at the student level, it's paying dividends, I believe.
Okay.